the Young Tongues podcast. My name is Barbara Fountain, and I am the founder and the CEO of the Young Tongues, a peer-to-peer support group for young tongue cancer patients across the world. And I'm super excited to bring you another fabulous guest this week, a member of our community. Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you. Now, we love to get to know people a bit beyond their cancer diagnosis. So if you had to introduce yourself to our listeners, who is Kelly?
I am 44. I come from East Yorkshire, and I'm a quality control officer for a static caravan company. Been there 20 years nearly.
Oh, wow. Long-serving member of the team then.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the first questions we always ask is, when did you first realise something was wrong or something wasn't quite right in terms of your mouth?
I'd say it was in early July. I was noticing I kept losing my voice. And I did think it was maybe acid reflux because my mum suffers with the same thing. I didn't really think anything of it. And I think it must have been August time. I started choking on food. Um, and it wasn't large pieces of food either. It was small bits of food. I was really struggling. Um, and then I started to feel what I thought were a throat infection.
Hmm.
It's sore throat, swollen glands, which felt a bit unwell. And I thought because I work in a factory environment and people are unwell, I'm the same. Um, I waited a week and it wasn't getting better. And I phoned the doctors and I said, I've been taking streptils and paracetamols, um, uh, cough medicine. It's not working. And I couldn't get an appointment to actually see the doctor physically. He said over the phone, right, sounds like a throat infection. We'll give you some antibiotics to take. So I took the antibiotics, and I think I'd say 3 days into taking the antibiotics, I was looking in the back of my throat. I just thought, it just doesn't feel right. It felt like the only way to describe it was like a hair, the feeling with the hair.
Stuck in the back of your throat.
Yeah, you
Mm.
just can't move it, stuff like that. And I thought, I'll have a look. And, as you do, you get your phone out and your torch on your phone, look into your mouth, and I saw a lump at the back of my tongue.
Mm.
And it was like a peak. It was like a pinky colour with a white cap on top. I thought this doesn't look right. And I looked inside my son's mouth just to see.
Compare and contrast.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to the out of hours, which was 8 miles away. And she had a look and I said to her, it's right there. If you push my tongue down, you'll see it. And she said, oh, yes, I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking at. It's a swollen tonsil. Go home and take the rest of your antibiotics. So I did. And I think a week later, I was still no better. And I rang up the doctors and I said, right, you couldn't see me last time. Things are no better. I've had antibiotics. You said you'd see me if it didn't clear up. So I said, I'd like an appointment, please, to see the doctor. I got one, I think it was about 3 days later. Um, and I went to see the doctor. He had a look and said, everything looks okay, bit inflamed in there. And I said, "Can you see the lump?" He went, "Lump?" I went, "Push the tongue down and have a look." And he says, he pushed it down and he was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I see it." Um, and he said, "Right." He says, it looks like an infection. And he says, "What I'll do is I'll fast track you to ENT." He says, "We'll put that it's suspicious, but," he says, "I don't want you to worry about this." He says, I'm not worried." He says, "I think it's just a really bad infection." And that night I went home and I just, I was just so panicked. Um, my head was all over the place. I thought, "Oh, waiting for this appointment with ENT," and I wasn't swallowing properly. I couldn't eat properly. And I thought, well, it must be bad if antibiotics haven't cleared it up. So I suffer with anxiety as well. And
Mm.
that night I had a panic attack and I went to the hospital and they saw me and, well, they saw me after 12 hours of waiting. And I looked and they said, "Oh, it looks like a cyst." And another ENT looked at it and he said, "Oh, it looks like, like a lump on the epiglottis, like a really bad infection." And this was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was tired. And so they says, "Right, well, you come back tomorrow. We'll um, we'll get somebody to have a look at it." Um, so I ended up going back. I think about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a bit of a sleep when I come back, and then I went back. Um, and I saw an ENT consultant, and he looked and he said, "Looks like a really bad infection. Um, we'll give you some more antibiotics." I went, "Some more antibiotics?" I said, "Are you sure that, you want to send me back home? You want me to have more antibiotics? Are you sure that it's not anything else?" And I saw a little bit of doubt in his man then,
Mm.
um, the look on his face. And he was like, "Yeah." He says, "What I'll do is I'll send you for an MRI." Oh, no, CT scan.
CT, yeah.
Yeah, we'll send you for a CT scan and see what comes of that. Uh, and I was sent home. And then 2 days later, I'd heard from um, the appointments and they booked me in to see an ENT consultant. They had a look at it and they said, "Oh, we think it's an infection, but or a cyst, so it needs removing." They booked me in to have it removed. Um, I'd never been put to sleep before, so I was very scared.
So had they already done the CT by then, or was that
They had
off?
done
Yeah.
the CT scan by then, but I'd had not had the results by then.
Right.
Um,
So like almost two things happening at the same time. They're sort of overlapping.
I nearly cancelled the appointment because I didn't want things getting mixed up and crossed over. And my mum said to me, "Don't cancel both of them. Don't cancel one of them.
Mm.
Keep them both and go to both."
Mm.
Luckily, I did because that CT scan that I had diagnosed me before I actually had the results from biopsy.
Mm.
The biopsy. Well, I was under the understanding that they was going to remove this lump. They thought it was a cyst. They was going to remove it. I shook the surgeon's hand and I said, "Thank you so much. It feels different." I said, "I can breathe properly. I can swallow it. Yeah, I feel like I can swallow properly." And I came home the same day. And 3 days later, I thought, "Don't feel right. Don't feel right at all." And I looked, and the lump was still there. Um, And I contacted them and they said, "Oh, we didn't take the lump out because it was when we'd cut into it, it was bleeding too much.
Mm.
So we took a biopsy from it and we're waiting for the biopsy."
But nobody told you that?
No,
No. Okay.
nobody told me that.
Yes.
And 10 days passed, didn't hear anything. On the 11th day, I rung and I said, "I haven't heard anything from this biopsy. I'm still choking on food." Um, and they said, "Well, we haven't had anything back yet, but the consultant would like to speak to you." Um, so he says that they will ring you. And he did. I got a phone call on bearing in mind, it was um, early August. I had this biopsy done. I think it was 5th of August, something like that. I didn't get a phone call till the 21st of September on my birthday, saying, "We haven't had your biopsy results back yet, but we've had the results from the CT scan." He says, "I'm afraid it doesn't look good. It looks like cancer." And I went, "Well, you haven't had the biopsy results back yet." He said, "Well, yeah, I'm only giving you half the story here. Mm, But yeah, from the CT scan, it looks like cancer." So he says, "I'll book you in to see a consultant and he'll discuss it with you." He said, "Because I'm going on holiday for 3 weeks." I was like, "Oh, what the-"
Well, yeah, you've just given me life-changing news and you're off on holiday. Well, I guess that's kind of happens, doesn't it? That's life because
Yeah,
consultants have their own life as well. But
it's
so,
true.
so we're already sort of tracking. You've got quite a lot of delays in there. You've had to overcome quite a lot of hurdles to get where you are at this point. So what happened next in terms of, did you get a different consultant? Were you seeing them the next week?
They booked me a consultant for a week later, and then I think it was 2 days before I was due to go to the appointment, they cancelled, said that he was ill.
Mm.
And then they rebooked me for another consultant. They rung me the same day and cancelled that. Then they booked another appointment with another consultant and they rung me, I think that was on the same day as well, and said she wasn't qualified enough to speak to me. And that they were thinking of giving me antibiotics. So then I had a glimmer of hope in my mind. I thought, well, if they're giving me antibiotics, did he get it right that it was cancer? So I still didn't have a definitive answer, because he said to me he was only giving me half the story. He needed the biopsy results to tell me, you know, if it was cancer or not. So then I finally got um, an appointment on I think it was the 10th of October.
So, wow. So that you went to see them early August. Yeah, you said early August earlier, and it's the 10th of, okay. Okay.
I was diagnosed officially. I was a T3. um, And I thought, right, all system go.
Mm.
No, that's all me. It takes 6 weeks
Yeah,
from
that's
from
diagnosis.
from 10th of October. From diagnosis, it would take 6 weeks to prepare everything, to get a plan um, in place. So I said, right, okay. And 6 weeks passed, and I had this appointment with the oncologist. It told me, that my treatment would be chemotherapy and radiotherapy, 30 days and 6 rounds of chemotherapy. So I thought, right, okay, when do we go? 6 weeks. So I was waiting 12 weeks in total. um,
Yes.
from the date of diagnosis. So, yeah.
Which was already delayed by a whole raft of different circumstances in the first place. It just seems mad. So
Yeah.
your tumor must have been quite far back down the tongue, so
Mm.
they couldn't operate on it. So they focused on radiation and chemo. So would you describe your cancer more of a oropharyngeal cancer or a tongue cancer or
They said it was base of tongue.
base of tongue? Okay, yes. So really far back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. So I'm I've known your diagnosis story because
Mm.
we worked on a couple of things in the run up to this podcast. And I'm horrified because the moment I was diagnosed, I mean, it was like being on a conveyor belt going as fast as a speed train. But to sit there for 6 weeks, I mean, you must be so patient. You say you've got anxiety. How did you manage with the first delay of thinking, oh, I might have cancer, might not have cancer, and you know the anxiety that would bring for anyone, but then also the 6 weeks of waiting till you have a plan, and then another 6 weeks of waiting until you actually start. Did you ever question why there was a delay, or what did they give you any reasoning, or
No, it just says that it's just what they do. It just I think it was the waiting. I'm not a very patient person. I like it, and I didn't feel in control, and I couldn't be in control. I had to wait for them to
Mm,
tell me what was going on, what the treatment was, and it was torture. It really was, because I like to prepare for things. I like to know what I'm doing, and then I can settle down and then I know what I'm doing.
mm,
But this was completely out of my control,
mm,
and I was scared.
mm,
I didn't sleep properly. I wasn't eating properly. Um, all I wanted was my treatment plan in place to know exactly what I was doing because I just felt this time was wasted and it was growing.
mm,
S- In the early days, I've seen paperwork that said it was a T2,
mm,
and then I got the official paperwork to say it was a T3.
mm, mm.
And it had spread to 2 lymph nodes by the time I was due to go for radiotherapy.
So that meant more aggressive
It was more,
treatment.
yeah, I could have got to the point where I didn't need chemotherapy
Mm.
or less radiotherapy, um, if it had been seen sooner. Yeah.
How do you feel about it now? We'll talk about what treatment was like for you.
Mm.
But I guess as we are talking about the diagnosis and the delays that came with it, how do you feel about it now? What-
Uh,
After some time has passed.
Upsetting because
Mm,
I don't think I'm the only person that this is happening to.
mm,
In fact, I know that I'm not the only person. The delays in treatment, the delays in getting to see consultants, delays in biopsy results. It all contributes to how advanced your cancer is. Then to if it was sooner, then I'd have been a T2,
yeah,
and then my treatment would have been different.
yeah,
Whereas I'm a T3, my treatment was a lot a lot worse.
yeah, absolutely. And it is just, it's wholly unacceptable as well. And I know that you've been told that by many other people as well. It's unfathomable, and I'm just so sorry that this has happened to you. And If we focus now on the time where you did have a bit of certainty in terms of treatment, do you feel like the information you were given prepared you for what was coming your way in terms of having 30 days of radiation and chemo? Did you say 6 rounds of chemo?
I had 6 rounds of chemo and 30 rounds of radiotherapy.
Mm.
Um, I think when they first tell you that you're having your radiotherapy and you're having your chemo, and I had to have a rig fitted as well.
Mhm. A
You're not
feeding tube rig, yeah.
feeding tube, yeah. You're not fully made aware of what goes on. Um, the feeding tube for me, um, it wasn't a very good experience.
Mm,
Um, you know, I stayed in overnight with my feeding tube fitting, and I was in excruciating pain where I was screaming out.
mm,
And I had a junior doctor come in and say to me, "Are you sure you're not making this up? Are you sure you're not, thinking it's worse than it is?" Like, what? Oh. He said, "Are you sure you don't suffer with depression and, making it out to be a lot worse than it is?" No, I'm not. But later on down the line, I found out why I was in a lot of pain. And it was because they went in twice into the where they insert the tube. Well, the
mm,
first attempt was unsuccessful. And
mm,
that's why I was feeling the pain that I was feeling. But they didn't tell me.
mm. There seems to be a real theme here of little to no communication, and when you did receive communication, it was quite confusing, to say the least. I mean, I'm confused listening to it, so I can't even
Mm.
fathom what it must have felt like for you.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I was the- I was just shocked. I was actually told by a nurse when she cut when she took the stitches out of the buttons, because you have, I think it's three metal no, plastic buttons, three
Mm,
plastic buttons that are stitched to you to so that the tubes placed in and it's right. It was only until she cleaned it all and took the stitches out, she said to me, "Oh, they've gone in twice."
mm,
And I was like, "Ah, right. Well, that's why I was in a lot of pain that night and screaming
mm,
because
mm,
they'd gone in twice."
mm. Also seems to me that, even though this might have been a junior member of staff who said, "Oh, are you sure it's actually hurting that much?" It just feels like a really bad way of communicating. And there's not much empathy there, is there? And I must admit, I listened to that and I straight away think gaslighting. I'm like, how dare you say it didn't hurt that much? I'm the one feeling it.
I'm pretty good with pain, to be fair. I'm pretty good with it. But this was something else.
Mm,
And I was saying to him, when I think it was about 5, 6 hours afterwards, I said to him, It feels like popping, like air's coming out of the at the sides of the disc type of thing." I couldn't see because it was just band like tape.
mm,
I couldn't see anything, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to lift this tape up because of infection, um, so we're not going to have a look at it." But I said, "It just feels like air's coming out of me."
mm.
Which it will have done because, they fill their stomach up with air.
Yeah.
But it was so uncomfortable and it just wasn't managing my pain at all. I was asking then for pain medication.
Mm,
It got to the point where he was injecting morphine into my shoulder. Um, and, it wasn't kept up with was the pain management. They were leaving me
too
to
long.
chill more.
Mm,
And when I was uncomfortable again, I was in so much pain again. And Do you know what? I was just so happy to go home.
Yeah. I remember having that conversation about pain management because I had a clicker for morphine after surgery.
Mm.
And they asked me, "Why are you clicking?" It's like, "Well, I'm staying on top of it because I'm not waiting for the pain to arrive and then clicking it because it takes time for it to work." And I just was like, "Well, doesn't that make sense?" And when we went home, I was going to say my manager, no, my husband managed my medication, and he had a little spreadsheet, but we always made sure that we alternated the different pain meds so we could manage it, so it
Mm.
never went out of control in the first place, that it
Yeah.
was a painful and traumatic experience. I think pain's horrible. I mean, that's such an obvious statement, but pain is horrible, and it makes this difficult experience even worse. Yeah, so, oh gosh. So you have a rig fitted. I assume that's before you start any treatment.
It was fitted about 6 days before I had treatment.
Okay.
It might be a bit less than that, 5 or 6 days before I started treatment. So it was uncomfortable laying on the bed to
Mm.
receive treatment. Really, it could have done with being a bit sooner before treatment.
So he
So
had an opportunity to heal before.
well,
Was that what you
well,
think?
oh,
Okay.
it's like starting to deal with. I was dealing with having a rig fitted and then going on to um, having treatment,
Mm.
and it was just uncomfortable. Really.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, and I guess when you're having radiation, you're laying on the bed with
mm,
the mask on, and that if you have when you're having chemo, is it right? You're sitting down and having it
yeah.
by
Mm.
infusion. So yeah, and with the rig where it's placed, I can imagine sitting was probably the worst. Or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then they didn't tell you, well, before all that, before the rig fitted, you've got to go to a dentist.
Mm.
She looked at my teeth and she says you need 2 or 3 fillings, 3 fillings, I think it was. And I thought, right, okay. And then I waited and she says, right, you're gonna have to go to the dentist. And I thought, what? Dentist? In my mind, they did it. Yeah. They don't. She says, you're gonna have to go to the dentist. I said, well, I haven't got a dentist. Says I ain't seen a dentist for about 14 years. And she says, well, she says, you're going to have to sign up for a dentist. If not, you're going to have to pay private. I said, I can't afford this. I've been off work. I was on sick.
Oh God, and also just for any international people listening in, we do have a dental crisis here in the UK, which means it is in some area. I think I can confidently say in most areas of the United Kingdom, it's pretty much impossible to get an NHS dentist. An NHS dentist means you still have to pay something, but it's heavily subsidised
Yeah.
by our healthcare system. Whereas if you go private, you just have to pay the full bill because we don't have insurance for it. So we don't pay a premium, you just then have to foot the entire bill. And having free fillings done
Yeah.
privately in this economy is an expensive thing to
Yeah.
do. And how did you go about finding a dentist? I mean,
I, r- I'd say 20, maybe 30 dentists over so many days. Um, and they could fit me in if I wanted to go private, but not if I wanted NHS. They had waiting lists.
Hmm.
Um,
and I assume you explained that you've just been diagnosed with head and
Mm.
neck cancer and that your treatment relies on you having these free fillings, and otherwise you can't start treatment.
Well, I rung one dentist. It was about 20 miles away, and I explained to him my situation, and their waiting list was 300 people on that waiting list before me. And I said to him, well, I've been diagnosed with base of tongue cancer. I'm due to receive treatment, but I says I need this doing before treatment. And they said, right, yeah, we will accept you. We'll put you. And they
Well,
do.
that is incredible, but it shouldn't take the grace of a kind dentist
Yeah.
to go, okay, we understand your situation. And also you'd already called 20 plus dentists to
Yeah.
end with this one. But oh my God, what an angel.
There was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They contacted the hospital dentist, and they said to him, "We feel that she only needs one filling. The other one just needs like just a cap over it type of thing."
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I had. I had one filling.
Mm.
And then I went back to the hospital dentist, and I couldn't be seen because they they I can't remember what she was called, like a hygienist dentist at the hospital. She'd gone on sick for a year.
And they didn't have anyone else.
They didn't have anybody else, and so I couldn't have the fluoride brush done
Mm.
on the teeth.
And
In combination.
just remind our listeners why a fluoride brush is important before you're having radiation and chemo.
They said to me that the fluoride brush was like a prevention. You know, when you're having radiotherapy, it helps protect your teeth.
Teeth. Yeah.
Um, luckily for me, when I think I was about 11, maybe 10, the dentist had said to my mum, "We'd like to trial this thing. We're going to be doing it in a third world country. Uh, it's a fluoride brush and it protects the teeth. So they'll not need, any dental work really." And so we had this brush put on our teeth, this fluoride brush. It was, we then had like an ultraviolet light that sealed it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've not needed to go to the dentist all these years, because I had originally this fluoride brush. So luckily, because I'd already had it done, I wasn't that worried that
Yeah.
I'd not had it done with the dentist at hospital. But unfortunately, there will have been other people that have not been so lucky like I was and already had this fluoride brush. So they will have had treatment without this fluoride brush.
Which is a preventative measure to make sure that you don't get long-term or well, not quite as much long-term dental challenges than what you would have without it on. Gosh, golly gosh. So lucky in the circumstances. So take us to your first day of treatment, radiation or chemo, which came first, I guess.
It was both. I had radiotherapy and chemo the same day. It was a long day, but I was up, I was ready, I was out that door, straight to the hospital. Couldn't stop, mate.
You were really happy to get this done and dealt with because you've been waiting for such a long time. Makes complete sense.
Yeah. I was ready for it. I was prepared for it, and I was like, let's go.
Mm.
And I got there, and they were very informative, very helpful, and very nice. It was just nice to be somewhere where they knew what was going on, and they were just very comforting.
Mm.
It was nice, and that from that day, it was enjoyable. It was, to go somewhere where I knew the same people were going through the same things as me. And I felt settled.
Mm.
Type of thing. I was ready for this fight.
Yeah. And did you feel finally, because I think there's been a real lack of care leading up to this, but you finally felt taken care of? I mean, what did
Yes.
the role of the staff in the radio department or chemo department like play in terms for you for your entire journey through that month?
They made it personal. That I walked in and it was good morning or good afternoon, and they called me by my first name and they asked me how I was. They asked me if I was worried about anything, if I wanted any advice on anything, and that was the radiotherapy team and the chemotherapy team, and even on the guy called John, he was on reception, and he was just such a lovely person to go and
Mm.
see every day. Just that person that made you feel so just happy. It just made things nice. They had a big bowl of sweets on the desk, and they were like boiled sweets, and he'd say, get some sweets, and how are you? And are you all right? And say hello to my mum because my mum came with me, and they were just really caring and really nice. They just little things mattered.
Yeah. I guess especially as um it must have been incredibly tough.
Mm.
Maybe not on day one, but most definitely as it progressed. How did radiation and chemo affect you in terms of side effects, and how did you feel going through it?
It it got to the point where I think after the fourth week, things started to kick in then. I was very tired. I was just walking from my bed to the car to then into the radiotherapy department to sit on a seat and wait for my treatment. Treatment was 3 minutes, I think, 3 or 4 minutes. But that wait was, you was waiting maybe an hour, 2 hours sometimes. And I was falling asleep and I was just so tired. And um, I know machines were breaking down as well. So appointments had to be jiggled round a bit. And sometimes I was there at 8 o'clock at night and I was so tired. But then I thought, well, the people in radiotherapy department, they'll be tired too. They'll be wanting to get home. And it was the Christmas. I was doing this radiotherapy and chemotherapy over Christmas. It was December till 16th of January.
Mm.
So it was tough.
Mm.
Tough on me, but tough on them as well, because they had homes to get to, and machines were breaking down. Sometimes two machines weren't working that day.
I was just gonna say that's crazy. Like, because I don't know. I don't know how I would cope with it because you're going in, you're expecting to have radiotherapy, and it's so important to have it every day, and then you encounter, oh, the machine's broken down. What would happen? How regularly would this happen?
It was every day, just about for I think 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, the
Mm.
machines were breaking down. And like I say, appointments got changed round. So, I think there was only one day where I got sent home and I couldn't have treatment. But then I was back the next day. Uh, But they always like saying to people, "Can you come in later?" They'd ring me and say, "Right, your appointment's at 1 o'clock. Can you come in at 8 o'clock instead at night?" And
Mm.
I was like, "Yeah, of course I
Yeah,
can."
because you
Uh,
just do what you have to, don't you?
yeah, because I know that their job's just as hard. Trying to sort people out and get people in. If I was being, a bit awkward and say, "Oh no, I don't want to do that," then it makes their job awkward because then they're just going to have to ring somebody else up and ask them. So I just said, "Yeah, of course I
Cool.
can." You can
Yeah.
ring for them. And they were working till like 9 o'clock at night.
Mm. Well,
Um,
well, it just goes to show that new investment announced by the government into radiotherapy machines is needed, desperately needed across the country. And I think it's, I don't know if it's a side, like, I don't know if the amount of money given will actually fix the entire problem. Probably only a percentage of that. We need to ask Radiotherapy UK on that because they'll have a much better answer. Well, so you have your month of treatment. How did you feel? How did you feel on your last day? Did you get to ring a bell, or did you get to do anything, a ceremony, or how? Or were you just like, I just need to get home, get to bed? How were you?
And wait, I rung the bell. I rung the bell. Do you know what I thought? Looking back, I got my family to record me ringing the bell. And at the time, I thought I cooked really well. And I coped with it really well. And now, looking at it now that I'm well now and looking back at this video, oh God, I was ill. I was very ill. But at the time, I thought I was doing well and I looked really good.
But but I think that talks to your mental strength in that sense, because in that moment, mentally, you felt well. You will have felt strong, which is which is massive. How did you feel after you've gone home? Because we know that radiation, the symptoms sort of continue to increase until they decrease. And how was that last phase of healing, so to speak, like for you?
I've got to admit, I wasn't fully prepared. They said to me, right, you've finished your treatment, go home, rest, watch lots of box sets. You've got all this radiotherapy and chemotherapy inside you. It's going to be still doing its job 2 weeks after you're gone. And, just, hunker down, they said. And I thought, right, 2 weeks, that's it.
Mm.
It wasn't. It was still for 12 weeks. I was in bed and I couldn't tell you what day it was. I couldn't send a text message. I was just so ill. I was absolutely out of it.
Mm.
I was just so poorly. My parents just didn't know what to do with me. I couldn't speak. I lost my voice. The only way of communicating was writing little notes on a notepad, or an app on my phone that spoke for me. I wasn't prepared.
Mm.
I just wasn't prepared. It was hell on earth. It really was. I was so poorly.
Mm. I I don't from so I don't have lived experience in this. I didn't have radiation, but from all the stories that I have had the privilege to listening to, I don't think anything ever prepares you for that.
No.
But if someone's listening who is preparing for radiation and is now really scared, well, the great thing is that we have an entire community of people that have gone through it and that are with us now to tell their story.
Mhm.
So I think that is an important goal to have in mind when you are
Yeah.
going through that. It gets better.
It does. I will say it. I do say, or I just said it was like hell on earth, but you have this strength inside you that you dig it from out of nowhere, and you feel so powerful that you think to yourself, "I'm gonna get through this, and I'm going to get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Believe me, you do get better. Things get better." And I know you feel so poorly, and you feel tired, and you just feel like just everything's hurting, but it does get better. It does get better.
Speaking of getting better, Kelly, now I want to focus the last bit of our interview a bit on the incredible work you've been doing in raising awareness, and sharing your story with the media, but also shining a light on all the delays that you encountered, which I personally believe has had quite an impact. And you've most definitely held a punch there, and you've had some fantastic encounters with fantastic people. So before I give anything more away, let us know from your perspective, how did that happen, and what was it like for you when you got contacted about wanting to be part of a piece of media, shall we say?
Well, firstly, after treatment, a lot of things happened, and I said to myself, I want people to know what's gone on. I don't want anybody to feel how I felt. Um, I was late at being diagnosed, and I said to myself, there'll be loads of people like this with late diagnosis and misdiagnosed. And while I was going through what I was going through, I had an ex-partner. We'd been together 15 years, and he contacted me and says, I'm there for you. Um, when you're better, we'll go for a drive out and in the countryside, because that's what I like. And he was off work at the same time, and he was diagnosed with sciatica, and he says, when I get better, he says, we'll go out for a drive. And a bit later on, we found out he was misdiagnosed. He didn't have sciatica. He had prostate cancer, and he passed away.
Mhm.
He was 50 years old, and I said to myself, I'm gonna get the message out there.
It's very, very brave of you, Kelly. And I think anyone listening can, everyone listening is with you, because we all feel the same.
Yeah.
Especially those of us with a diagnosis, and you know everything that comes with it.
I just feel so strong about it because it could have easily been me. If I hadn't have pushed it and said, no, it's not a cyst, it's not a throat infection, it's something more than that. If I haven't have pushed it,
Hmm.
it could have easily been me as well.
You made your voice heard. Absolutely.
I'm
And
not doing it for me, I'm doing it for everyone.
that is, I think that comes across so clearly, and it's a huge tribute to your former partner as well, that his story has affected you in this way. You know, it takes a lot of courage to share your story and to share everything that you've been through, publicly as well.
Mm.
Um, and it's made a huge impact. So, if we talk about the work that you have done with Radiotherapy UK, we put you in touch. So I'll rewind a bit. So Young Tongues works with Radiotherapy UK as a charity partner. We're in the same space. We support each other, and they got in touch to ask if we had someone in our community that has experienced delays
Mm.
and the consequences of those delays.
Yeah.
And you got in touch and you shared your story with me, and I was just, oh my God, this is a list of failings where I strongly feel you've been failed on so many levels, so many times. So that you were willing to share that was really appreciated. After that, I handed you over to Radiotherapy UK. So very much. So what happened after that? Because all I then suddenly saw, you were all over TV. So it's like,
Oh, then I got I got contacted by Radiotherapy UK, and I gave them my story and told them what had happened, and they were really surprised, and really shocked and upset as well. They said to me, how have you got through this? And I said, well, I'm so passionate about it, and I just wanted to tell what had gone on, what had happened, and the good parts and the bad parts. The ending was brilliant. I cannot fault Radiotherapy UK. Sorry, the radiotherapy team at the hospital I was at. I cannot fault them at all. They were amazing people, and my cancer nurse specialist, she was lovely. She was reassuring and things like that. And I wanted to highlight this because they just don't get that recognition.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I spoke to her, and she said to me, "If I was approached, would you tell your story?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I will. Yeah." And she contacted me, and I can't remember his name, an MP,
Well, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davies, yes.
an MP. He contacted me personally. I spoke to him, and wow, he says, "I'm going to tell your story." Um, And I think it was he was going to tell my story, but I think it was only because another story had came up in Parliament. He said, "I didn't want it to overshadow yours."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it says, "We will discuss it at another time, but now is not the time." But I was contacted by ITV News, and they came to I was at my friend's in Sheffield at the time. She's another um, tongue cancer survivor as well, and she says, it's okay if they want to come to the house. You can have the interview here. And so I did. I did the interview. I was so nervous, but I did what they told me to do, and
Yeah.
I just answered the questions.
Yeah. You just
Responded.
spoke the truth. But I think what's incredible to me is like everything that's happened since. I mean, so we've had an election, we have a new government that happened a bit earlier, but for a long time we weren't quite sure what was going to happen in terms of actually seeing changes, and to a large degree we still don't. But with Radiotherapy UK, they've been very instrumental on a campaign to end the long waiting times and the delays between diagnosis and treatment. So, not necessarily your lead up to getting diagnosed, but specifically between diagnosis and treatment. And there's lots of stats out there, and you'll see there's been a shameful amount of delays of people not getting their treatment in time, and across lots of different type of cancers. But by being able to showcase, I guess is the right word, your story, it didn't only tell the story of the delays that are happening within our NHS, but it also put a spotlight on oral cancer, base of tongue cancer altogether, head and neck cancer, which is really important because it is a cancer that doesn't get reported about or talked about a lot. And, most of us didn't know tongue cancer was a thing until we got diagnosed with it. So that's really important. And I think the fact that you got to speak to, not a backbench MP, but the leader of a political party who took the time to listen to you. I mean, I just have to say, for caveat, the charity, the Young Turks, doesn't take any sides or preferences across any political parties. We're just happy when they speak to us nonstop. But for someone to take the time and interest and listen to you is hugely appreciated, no matter what the colour of the party is. And I do hope he's going to keep his promise and tell your story on the floor in question time, which what was planned, to really shine a light on delays, but also oral cancer and the things that individuals go through.
I want it to be more publicly known that there is differences in which hospitals you go to, as to there's different treatments and all different types of things. And I never realized that. And I only realized that until I started speaking to people on Young Tongues, people on Macmillan's side, and I became friends with a lady in Sheffield. And so I could see the differences in where we live to what type of treatment you get. So like with my dentist, they said I needed 3 fillings, but with hair dentist, it's a standard that they take 8 teeth out. Why is that? Why
Mm.
take 8 healthy teeth out? And with like, let's say mine, with my lymphedema, um, we have lymphedema nurses. Well, I had a 2-hour appointment with the nurse and she just spoke to me. Whereas my friend in Sheffield, she gets a massage every week.
Mm. Mm.
In the massage.
There's huge disparities over the entire country in terms of treatment and support. And you are right. The Young Tongues really highlight that because we ask each other questions and people give advice and they go, I didn't get that, but I'm not this. And you're like, whoa. And sometimes we don't even live that far apart from each other.
No,
And the standard of care is just completely different.
completely different. Yeah, yeah. I think it should we should all be. Yes, I understand that everybody's treatment's different, and but the aftercare. Why is it the same? Why am I not getting the same level of care as somebody in Sheffield? Or why am I not seen quicker like somebody in London?
Yep. And
It's different that it's so far apart, the differences. It's unreal and it should be the same.
yeah, and it should be a race to the top. So it's the best standard of care across the country. And yes, there will always be some geographical differences because, personnel, a person is different. Whoever treats you, you might have someone who's really great and someone who's maybe more sort of your average. And you will come across that. But I think when it comes to treatment as such, I think what you're saying is kind of right in the sense that I feel it's more that our treatments shouldn't be that different from each other. Our experiences of them are all very unique and different. But I think when it comes to protocols of how to support a tongue cancer survivor, in our case, a young person, that there should be a protocol in place of what would be the acceptable standard of what type of support someone should receive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's definitely a bit of a gap there.
There
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kelly, thank you so, so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure all of our listeners do as well. And just keep up the good work and keep spreading spreading your story. And we hope we can continue supporting you and find you more opportunities as well. And I can't wait, Ed Davey, if you're listening to this, I can't wait for you to mention it. I'm going to hold you to it. And yes, so thank you everyone for listening in again today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to come onto the podcast and share your story, or if you would like to recommend maybe an expert to come and join us on the podcast, please email us on podcast@youngtonguesglobal.com. Make sure you follow us on social media. If you're a patient and aren't a part of our Facebook group, what are you waiting for? Come and join us. And on that note, until next week. Thank you so much, Kelly. Bye-bye.
Hi.
Okay.